Hi guys, I'm back again. Slightly different view today. There's a terrible solar glare on top of me, but you can see my Virgin Mary altar in the back, so maybe that's nice. I just wanted to come on quickly. I don't want to make a lengthy tale of it today. I just wanted to check in and sort of try to put the eyes on the dots on the eyes, yeah. Gotta know which is top and bottom. I suppose I'm a bit confused again because I've been doing, I was watching a Teal Swan video about her new book where she did a lecture and sort of an interactive thing with people about her new book, The Anatomy of Loneliness, which I think is going to be fabulous again. And we should really invent a new word for how it feels when you're in all this big turmoil with yourself, because you're actually realizing things and you're actually making fabulous progress, and it just hurts like hell. And will it never stop hurting? Will it never just, simmer down and become sort of normal and natural? This is my life, and can I ever accept my things? I don't know. Every time, every turn of the road, it just seems there's another surprise. Another, I didn't realize that. I didn't know that. And of course I did. But I was separated in myself from the part of me that had the other bit, the other half of the information, I suppose. And so I'll link the video to Teal Swan's thing down in the description, because I think it's absolutely worthwhile. There's an hour and a quarter's worth of stuff, so you'd better, grab a drink if you want to delve into that. My realization coming into this, coming up right now, was that, as I've said about 10 times already, my life has very much been subjected to the opposition between my parents. And as time passes, it just shows me that it's that all the time, and it's been that, and it's been hurting me, that the extent to which I was also my father's daughter was really a big problem. And the moment where my mother couldn't really live with my father, in those moments she really took it out on me. And of course I was 2 or 3 or 4 years old at the time, so my memories are rather vague and distant, and I have not been able to interpret that in any other way than it was supposed to be meant as. I'm not making a very clear sentence here, but you get my drift, I think. She wanted to eradicate within me, just like it had been done to her as well, which isn't really a factor for me as a kid, as an infant, the parts that linked me to my father. And as time progresses, as this fantastically interesting and upsetting year of 2018 is progressing towards its end, I'm still finding this quite painful and quite... I am trying to express here what happened. What Teal Swan explains is that in order to survive, I had to kind of split myself apart, where one part is with her, and so not only her opinions and her approach to life, but just physically on her team. And the other half of me, I had to disown completely, abandon in myself. I thought that was so crucial that I just had to put this out here before I go to the social restaurant later today, which is in about 2 hours or so. I will be up to my eyeballs in, cutting up vegetables and doing all that stuff. And I want to do that 100% as well. I don't want to hang around there like a zombie because my brain is in a fog over this thing again, where so I have to try and, get this cleared up, at least for now, at least for today. Let me just, put it on the record that this is what happens. And the way Teal explained it also is that our consciousness is like water, and I'm really saying what she's saying much better. Water can just, separate from itself and spread in all sorts of channels. And so that's something that we don't realize. And in a couple of videos before this one, I said also that our consciousness is many layered and on all sorts of ways, and that it isn't a consciousness, the me, right, isn't really a single nugget of single-minded determination and purpose in itself. We are all those things, right? And the more you open the doorway to the other parts of you, I suppose, in the end you get stronger, but it takes some doing. I feel like I have dug a hole in the ground and I'm sitting at the bottom of it. I was also investigating my parents' history again. I'm always about my parents, aren't I? I was doing what you call that? Family tree work again a bit, trying to find a couple more ancestors, and I discovered one tiny element, a couple of tiny elements. My great-grandmother, whose life ended in Auschwitz, she had a brother as well. And I found him online, and his life also ended in Auschwitz. And there were her daughters, at least a daughter of hers, one, and her husband, and their little children. They all went to the gas chambers. And the problem with all that Jewish ancestry is that I want to know a lot more about how they lived, not only those people like my great-grandparents or their relatives, but further back in history. And each time it's like my attention is decoyed, it's not the right word, but diverted into the Second World War drama and pain and all that terror of, completely impossible way of, you can't imagine concentration camps and all the rest of it. So there's been an effect of these things on my grandparents and on my parents, on my father. This is from my father's side. I'm also very interested in their ancestors way before this. So I'm trying to, go as far back as I can, looking up family trees and stuff, and it's really very interesting. Somehow November and December are always very great months. Winter months for me are good for investigating family history. That's something I'm really very fond of doing online. I'm squinting onto the phone screen for hours on end, really. So and you wonder why I have headaches. No, yeah. Another thing I discovered, is a tiny little nugget, is that one of the, who was that then? I suppose the father of my great-grandmother, her father was actually a Portuguese Jew. And I didn't have direct relatives so far who were Sephardim. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but Sephardim are the Portuguese Jews, and the rest of them, the, circus people and the acrobats and the horse riders and trick horse riding, jumping around on the back of a horse and that type of stuff. I'm a descendant from those people. I'm not scared of horses, really. I love horses, but I wouldn't see myself doing any of that. And there were jugglers and magicians and acrobats and tightrope walkers and stuff like that. So I was trying to find out a bit more about how they, what their life used to be like and how they goes about things. And it's very hard to find anything about, what they ate and what kind of food they had. I'm not, too confident because they, I suppose they were poor, and so I'm not sure. I suppose their fortunes very much went up and down, like a yo-yo. One time they were rich and they had big parties and they splurged completely and they bought expensive stuff for everybody. And the next week they were just broke as, poor as church rats is what we say in Holland. But I didn't know there were actual Portuguese Jews there, and the other Jewish family groups, they're called Ashkenazi. I don't even know what the name comes from. So I suppose it's Hungarian originally, but I should check that out. And they're from the east of Europe. So, Poland, Russia, Czechoslovakia, those type of places. And they have a different heritage. There's a much larger group of those people who were always poor or almost completely broke most of the time. They're closely knit. They have a lot of closeness with their relatives. They're really very family oriented, and they used to live in the ghettos, and all the European ghetto type of culture really goes back to the Ashkenazi side, as far as I know at this moment. Whereas the Portuguese, the Sephardim, had more money. They were into money business as well. And they also had a wealth of culture, and they wrote manuscripts and stuff like that. And they, back in the Middle Ages and Renaissance times. And I've always been a very nut, really, about manuscripts, medieval or otherwise. And I'm a rather dab hand at pen and ink myself, and I think so at least. And I just love doing little, pen and ink wriggles and stuff like that. And other than both my parents being rather clever and being rather, creative and artistic, and also pretty, proficient. I'm not sure if that's the right word. They were good at things, and they could learn things easily, and they could express, they could make beautiful things, both of them. And so I inherited that. I just always thought that the manuscript making type stuff was something I inherited just in general from them. But maybe there's another thread there, just like I'm a kind of a half, not completely, but 40% gypsy type person who doesn't conform to rules, who is willful. Yesterday I spent half an hour searching for the English translation of a Dutch word which is always used about women and girls, and I ended up with the term willful. So you do what you want, where you do what you want, huh? And you have your own thoughts and your own ideas, and you just don't conform to society and whatever that's supposed to mean. So I have a strong tendency always to do that, and to be headstrong and stubborn, and not not easily convinced of adapting myself to other people's, especially group ideas. They're never my thing. So eigenwijs is the Dutch word. Eigenwijs, your own wisdom, except it's mostly used in a negative way, just like the word willful, really. So that's completely another little alleyway of thought there. And I wanted to, as a final, little point here, I wanted to show you this guy. I hope you can see him. I'm going to put him up a bit closer to the camera. This is Josephus, I suppose. He's a rose quartz crystal skull, and I suppose he's been in my hand for the past, quarter of an hour. He's been my buddy for quite a number of years now, and his name just came out. Josephus is I suppose, what is it, 4th century classical Roman writer. I have no idea really what that means, but it was a period where there was a transition to Christianity, and there was all sorts of stuff going on. I should go back to that, maybe. I'm not even sure there's a relationship to this little guy. The reason he's white and not pink, he used to be pink, is that he spent an hour in the fireplace by himself, in the fire, and he survived magnificently, I must say. I would never have done that, never have put him in the fire. Of course, I was very upset with my husband for just picking up my little bag that I doodled with him inside it, and it was a white bag, and he assumed that it was a rolled up used handkerchief, and he just chucked it into the fire. And it turned out that it was this guy. So I was yelling at him. You have no idea. Turns out he survived fine. He's got a tiny bit of, fracture lines across his forehead here. But he's not falling apart. He doesn't make any crunchy noises or any of it. So he's tiny. I'm really very fond of him. And actually, there's one other thing I'd like to show you, since I'm talking about tiny things, and it kind of links up with the whole family relatives business. What I realized is why I am so fond of making my own sort of clandestine little tarot decks. Maybe if I explain that now properly, then you can see why I'm doing this, and maybe I can even communicate what it is that I'm doing. These are my newest little cards. They are the wooden tarot. I just hope this doesn't completely shine. These are a couple of majors in there. The wooden tarot is a really rather weird, funky deck with lots of bones. Here's the 9 of Swords. Isn't that cool? The owls have got 9 eyes in total. So it's the 9 of plumes. And then that's the 9 of the air element, right? So it's swords. They're really pretty cards, and they here's a couple more. The backs that I made are cardboard, either blue, that's the blue color right there, or brown, depending on the type of cardboard I used. And they're quite shiny because can you see how shiny that is? This is a bonus card, so that'll be Pentacles, I think, the Earth element. The 9 of Pentacles. Can you see he's got a little mushroom in the middle? Of course, I can't resist that, can I? There's lots of bones and crystals and skulls and elements of nature elements, lots of animals' faces and stuff like that, and flowers and antlers and roses. Here's the Knight of Blooms, so that will be Knight of Cups there for you. He's a swordfish. It's a very original deck, so I love it. Instead of just buying the deck in the way it's supposed to look, I printed it out, and because my printer cartridges are almost empty, all that's left is the blue, really. I get a couple where there's a bit more brown, normal and natural looking colors like that, and the other ones are basically purple. So I did a lot of work with purple edging, and I even bought a packet of a pink, purple, lilac, violet, what you call that, lavender type pigment. So this is powder, right? I'm going to mix that up with, that's a gorgeous color. I'm sure it's not going to come out on the screen. It's a splendid ultramarine. Ultramarine? Yeah. Powder. I'm going to mix it up with gum arabic and water and use that to paint details with and stuff on these cards and in drawing as well. And there's an element to me of making a little deck like this. I am working on this type of little project for a couple of days at least, choosing them, printing them, and then cutting them out, pasting them on cardboard or wallpaper or any of it. Working at it with wallpaper glue a number of times, often because they don't stick properly, so it dries out too quickly or anything. And then you have to go back in with the wallpaper glue again. This is what wallpaper glue looks like, just a type of gluey stuff. And then I just love doing this because of there's a couple of tendencies in here. And I was going to show you a quote that I found when I was looking at the circus history bit. It says here, can you see that? You can do a lot of things in a circus and keep them a secret. And that kind of struck me enough so that I had to write it down and put it, in view here, because that's what happens when there's a circus mentality. There's a kind of a social group that you belong to, and it's okay to really have your own strategies and have your own approach to life, and you're not talking about everything, you're not sharing everything. This was about the story where the quote is from, was really about the Second World War and about people hiding in the circus group from the Gestapo. So that's quite serious, of course. In my life, I just like things to be portable, because I kind of have this program in my brain that I need to be able to pack up my things and run at any time. I like things to be clandestine, invisible, just like myself, and to not cause any response from people, preferably for people to only see, more or less a aesthetic and exterior of me, and to, hide everything else, really, of my personality. And I also am very much used to always inventing my own little systems to deal with things, to cope, or because nobody was ever there to help or to make any difference, or to make me feel like I could, learn anything in a normal kind of context. I'm going to sit on this side for a bit. So I had to make it up as I went along, invent my own systems, invent my own approaches to life. And of course, I'm never going to let them go. And making this type of cards, set, this kind of deck, it embodies all those different aspects. It's creative. I get a wooden tarot that is completely different from anybody else's. I'm going to dig out the lovers here. No, I'm going to dig out my favorite so far. One of my favorites is the Chariot, right there. It's a snail, and he's got mushrooms on his back. And this is a card, this is more or less finished. The way this looks is the way they will all look in the end. And doing this type of work, it makes me happy to, at the end, I've got, a project that lasts me almost 2 weeks, I think, getting it all finished. And I can work with what I got. The fact that my cartridges are almost empty it sort of delivers to me a deck that is purple in color and blue. So if I use purple and blue inks and pencils with that, then I am sort of developing or making it, transforming it into a deck that looks completely different from the original wooden tarot, which is perfectly beautiful and I'd love to have. But that's not how my life has been always. So I am, in a sense, completely nostalgic, clinging to my past, clinging to my identifications and all the rest of it. And just like everybody else, really. Only I'm trying to be aware of it. I'm trying to be honest and open about it and talking about it. And it feels much better talking about it. So there you go. I hope some of this is inspiring to you. I hope you have a great day on whichever side of the world you're on. And some of you are now, I hope, fast asleep, which is the way I like people best, the way I like myself best, fast asleep. Never mind that. We have to be awake at some point. We have to wake up, right, to all of this. And or at least when we wake up, this is what we run into. There, right there, all that. Thank you very much for watching, guys. And I'll see you around. Bye-bye.